Well, hello, CRNA School Prep Academy students and future CRNAs. I'm your host, Jenny Fennell, and CRNA. Welcome back to another episode of CRNA School Prep Academy podcast. So just there's been a lot of changes in my world as of late. We actually just had our third child. At the time of this recording, it's been about a month since we've had our third child. And as you can tell, I haven't brushed my hair. For those of you who are watching me on YouTube, I haven't brushed my hair in about a week. But to be honest, I usually don't brush my hair. So I don't really know if it's a baby or just the fact that I'm really lazy and don't brush my hair. So don't mind that. But today we are going to talk about shadowing. So I've seen a lot of questions as of late in our Facebook community, which if you're not a member of yet, it's ICU Dreaming About Anesthesia by CRNA School Prep Academy. It's a free Facebook group. I really recommend you to check it out if you have not yet. There's tons of great questions always posted in that group. It's over 12,000 members in there. It's just a really great community and a safe place for you to ask questions. But enough on that. I've seen a lot of questions about shadowing experiences as of late because woohoo, things are starting to kind of lighten up a little bit. Corona's dissipating. And so a lot of facilities are kind of opening back up the doors for shadowing opportunity. So I kind of just wanted to make this episode somewhat timely in that I want you guys to make sure you're seeking out this opportunity early and often. Okay. So I guess a lot of schools say shadowing's recommended. Some will say it's required. But back to this whole recommended required, I hope you know by now, if you've been listening to me and following me, that if it says it's recommended, just in your mind say, okay, that's required, because any recommendations to be competitive are going to be required. Okay. And not to mention, you don't really want to enter a career path before you've really done your due diligence and research on it, because that could be a very expensive and just overall stressful mistake to make. Can you imagine starting anesthesia school and spending tens of thousands of dollars and starting clinical only to realize, oh my gosh, this is not what I thought it was. I really don't like this. I can't picture myself being a CRNA anymore. Oh gosh. Yeah. And unfortunately, I have heard of that happening. So that's also why these schools really like to see that you have shadowed, because it gives them reassurance that that won't happen to you. Meaning you're not going to be that student who decides to leave because all of a sudden CRNA is not what you thought it was. It's just not you don't want to put yourself in that position. So please, 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 if you choose this career path, you need to make sure you're at least job shadowing a handful of times, ideally, but at least once, to make sure that this is for sure something you can picture yourself in. What I will tell you, at least from my shadowing experience back in the day, it was kind of like it lit the fire under me. Like it really gave me that excitement and that encouragement I needed to push through and keep going. Because I probably haven't shared with you too often that I was pretty depressed in the ICU. I did not like my time in the ICU. Not that I loved the nurses I worked with and I love the ICU knowledge and critical care. But I dealt with a lot of like clinical depression because I was around so much death and suffering. I had a really hard time coping with that as an ICU nurse. And I still to this day, I can't watch scary movies. Scary movies, yes, but like torture and like death. Oh gosh, no, I don't like death. I don't like watching someone get hurt. It like physically makes me sick. So I had a hard time in the ICU, to say the least. Shed a lot of tears, that's for sure. But anyhow, enough on that, totally off topic. But yeah, shadowing is something that I think will also help you keep that fire and that momentum to keep pushing you forward. So it's not just about seeing if this is the right career path for you. It's also about keeping that motivation to push through, because applying to CRNA school and getting accepted to CRNA school is hard. Okay. It's really hard. I know you know that because you're here, you're listening to me. And so I know you need guidance and support. So getting that shadow experience will really give you reignite that passion that you have to pursue this career path. So that's another benefit of doing this. And when I say to do it frequently and early on, a nursing school, why not do it in nursing school? If you're already a nurse's aide, means you already have access to the medical world. There's nothing wrong with going down to the surgical department and the anesthesia department and saying, hey, I'm a nursing student. I work here as a nurse's aide. I would really love to spend some time with the CRNA because I'm interested in potentially pursuing this in the future. You don't have to, that's all you have to do. You don't have to get permission from anyone to go do it besides seeking it out yourself. Call the operator, ask for the anesthesia department and try to set up a time. Again, you don't have to already be a nurse to gain shadow experience. It's just the desire to want to see and learn more. For me, I was a nursing student, and I knew critical care was something I was interested in because I just liked critical care knowledge. I loved pharmacology. I loved pathophysiology. And like most nursing students, you have heard of CRNA, and I had heard of CRNA, but I didn't really realistically think I could actually do CRNA. I thought it was way above me. I thought I just wasn't smart enough, wasn't capable. But I was interested. I was interested. And so I had an opportunity to rotate in the ICU as a senior nursing student. And I definitely let that known that I wanted that opportunity to do that. And I was fortunate and lucky enough to be selected to get rotation in the ICU as a nursing student. And it happened to be in the surgical ICU. And so I was getting report from a CRNA, and we would routinely get reports from CRNAs. And so I went up to them, and obviously I used my best judgment that it wasn't a critical point in getting a report, and went up to them and said, hey, I would really love to shadow you someday if that's a possibility, because I'm considering CRNA. I'm still in nursing school. Is there maybe a contact I can get that would help me to be able to do that? And it was no problem. They were excited to help me. So I had my first shadowing in the operating room as a nursing student to see a CRNA. And it was really from that moment on that I was like, oh yeah, 100%, this is for me. This is so stinking cool. Like, I can't wait to know that kind of knowledge and be able to do those things. It really, from that day forward, I made a point to get into the ICU as a nurse's aide. I just took all the necessary steps from that day forward to make sure CRNA was something that I could work towards. And I went on to shadow a handful of, like, at least 3 other times. I think I had a total of 4 or 5. I can think of 4, but I thought I had 5. But either way, I don't remember documenting all of my shadowing experiences. I only documented a couple, and that was just right before my application. That was probably a mistake. I should have documented them all. And so in the show notes for you guys, I do have a documentation tool for you to use, even if it's early on, just because I think it's helpful to kind of jog your memory, and it never hurts to have proof. Some of these schools only say recommended. They don't actually require you to have proof of your shadowing experience, but I think you should. And you can submit it as additional documentation in your application process. Even if they have their own form to fill out for a shadowing, it never hurts to submit additional documentation from your shadow experience as a nursing student or early on, prior to even knowing they had a shadow form. It never hurts, because it shows, oh, look, they have, not only did they say they shadowed a handful of times or 5 or 6 times, they have proof that they did. I think it's going to show how bad you want the career path. So I, again, put that in the show notes for you guys. And what you'll see is it's mostly just check marks, and it has you get the signature of your CRNA. I encourage you on the back of that paper, or I would actually encourage you to probably type it up when you go home after your shadowing experience. Type up what you learned that day, because believe me, you'll forget. And especially if it's years away from your application process, you'll forget. And I think it's really cool too to kind of compare your first shadowing experience to like your last shadowing experience. See, wow, look how much I've learned over my period of time, and look how much more understanding I have of the career path from my first shadowing experience to my last shadowing experience. But I encourage you to kind of summarize your experience, what you learned from the CRNA that day, and just kind of type it out, summarize it, and have it be a part of your actual form. That could be on a separate piece of paper. Obviously, the shadow form that you'll download is mostly just a checkbox and a student CRNA signature to kind of prove that you actually did it. But again, having a second piece of paper that's kind of a summary of your day, I think, is a good thing to have. But yeah, so start as a nursing student, start as an ICU nurse. Whenever you decide CRNA is what you think you want to do, that is the time or the moment that you should actually start your shadowing experience. And a lot of people come to me and they ask me, they're like, well, Jenny, how do I get this experience? Especially with COVID, it made things extremely difficult. A lot of hospitals were not allowing anyone extra in the OR. And again, luckily they're starting to lighten up on that a little bit. But the best way really is to call the anesthesia department at a hospital that you currently work at, or are a nursing student at, and to let them know that you're interested. And again, that could just be calling the operator and asking for the anesthesia department. I've had nurses ask me if they should ask their nurse manager. No, I would not do that. You don't need anyone's permission to shadow. It's you don't. So, and not to mention, especially if you're brand new in the ICU, the last thing you really want to do is say, hey, I just started, but I really want to shadow a CRNA. It doesn't, I just try to give you guys some advice. You don't really want them to say, okay, I'm new here, but I want to leave as soon as possible. That's kind of the way it looks to them. And remember, you have to ask for references from them. So as much as to use your best judgment on whether your nurse manager would be cool with you knowing that you want to pursue CRNA, the vast majority of people kind of keep that a little bit of a secret until they're closer to actually applying to school. So again, you don't need permission from your nurse manager to job shadow. Reach out to the anesthesia department, let them know that you're interested. If you get report from a CRNA, get their number, let them know you're interested. That's all you have to do. So that's my advice, is to start by where you work, okay? Because that's usually how you're going to be able to get into the operating room. A lot of hospitals don't like outsiders because there's a lot of paperwork to fill out. There's a lot of like HIPAA compliance things. So it's just easier to try to seek out opportunities where you currently work as a nurse or where you currently rotate as a nursing student. So keep that in mind. You can also, if you're a nursing student, you can ask your clinical instructor, go up to one of your educators that you know and like and trust, and say, hey, I'm really interested in this career path. Is there any way you can help me gain a shadowing experience as a nursing student? So that's my advice on how to get an experience. But don't be afraid to kind of step out of your comfort zone and travel for this experience. I've known nurses who have gone out of state to get this experience. Now that kind of stinks, and I hope that's not what you have to do. But that's how important I think it is to make sure you're getting this experience, even if you have to travel to do that. Again, and just trying to network as much as you can. Now, one way to network and get these experiences too is go to open houses. Get to know the program director, other current SRNAs, and touch base with them and see who they know. That's always a way to do it, is try to network within the community and try to say, hey, how did you get your shadowing experience? Who did you talk to? Do you have their number? Can I reach out to them? And be persistent. Persistence is key. You don't want to give up after not getting through to one place. If one place told you no, keep trying new places. Show up at their desk and say, hey, I'm here. You're not going to ignore me on the phone anymore. I'm here to shadow. Set me up with an experience. I've had people who are really persistent, and if they got a bunch of no's on the phone, they would just start showing up in the anesthesia office and saying, hey, I'm a nurse. I really want to pursue CRNA. I really need a shadowing experience so I can apply to school. Can you please help me? That's all you have to do. There's nothing wrong with asking, and don't be afraid to ask. But yeah, back to the recommended versus required. If you've tried and you're just like, I can't do it. My application's due and I need a shadowing. I can't get a shadowing experience. Reach out to your program and seek their guidance. A lot of programs are allowing a virtual experience. And what I mean by that is simply either talking to a current CRNA about the profession. I have a virtual shadowing experience I did on CRNA School Prep Academy for my students. It's 3 hours. So I really try to jam pack everything in there, try to talk about pre-op, induction, maintenance, emergence. I even did a virtual anesthesia machine check with Drager's online virtual machine check. I encourage you to check out that website and try to explain things. So I try to make it as thorough as possible. And that way, my students are not held back by that requirement. And a lot of programs have been very accepting of that. However, I'm going to preference that with, they still prefer an in-person experience. A virtual is not the same as in person. It never will be. It never can be. So even if you've gained a virtual experience with a CRNA or with CRNA School Prep Academy, I still encourage you to seek out that in-person experience, because there's nothing that can really replace that, you guys. And there's nothing that can really give you more insight into what your day would be like as a CRNA than actually seeing it happen. And so just know that schools who are lenient and will allow a virtual experience still prefer an in-person experience. So don't just give up, or don't think, well, I'll just get a virtual one and I won't even try for an in-person one because I don't think I can. You never know until you try. I'm going to end that little rant right now, but just so you guys know. And again, why it's important is just because you want to make sure you're investing in your future. You're putting a lot of time and effort into going to school. You want to make sure it's what you want to do. And I've kind of went over the benefits already, as far as it'll kind of fuel your passion for wanting to pursue this career path. And it'll get a lot of your questions answered, and it allows you to network. I mean, I could go on and on. There's a lot of benefits of shadowing. But again, another question I get from my students is, oh my gosh, I'm nervous to shadow. What do I ask? What if I say something stupid? All those fears of like being in an unfamiliar environment. I get it. And the vast majority of students that I see that come shadow are very quiet. And you can tell they're scared. But don't be afraid to ask your CRNA questions. And now be mindful of when you ask those questions and be cognizant of what's going on, meaning if they're in the middle of induction or something going on in the case that needs their attention, don't bombard them with questions during that moment. Maybe take a lunch break with them and then ask them all your questions on their lunch break or during their morning break. Or if you have a longer case and the CRNA now is kind of sitting down and in the maintenance phase of anesthesia and is kind of just, and a lot of times they may prompt you, say, hey, what questions do you have? They may prompt you when a good time is to ask them questions. Not everyone is going to be that friendly, but hopefully, or maybe they won't even know you're interested. I've also had students who I actually think are in the operating room to shadow the nurses, not me, like the OR nurses, not the CRNA. And so sometimes I just don't even know that they want to know more about being a CRNA because they're a nursing student and they're there because they're trying to see the OR nurses. But maybe they're interested in CRNA. So don't be afraid to come up to your CRNA and ask questions and say, hey, this is something I'm interested in, because then they'll be more likely to say, oh, you are? Cool. Well, let's chat, and then maybe get their email or their phone number. That kind of thing. So yeah, don't be afraid. And as far as what types of questions, I think the important questions to ask are, what do you see as the pros and cons to your job? Do you like your job? What do you dislike about what you do? What's your favorite anesthesia case to do and why? And then essentially just bringing a notepad and taking notes. What drugs are they pushing? Why do they tape the eyes prior to doing a DL, a direct laryngoscopy? Learning some of the terms that they use and just jotting those down. You don't always have to ask why in the moment, but jot them down. And then when you have time to chat, ask them, like, why did you tape the eyes prior to doing your intubation? And they can tell you because corneal abrasion is a risk, or, they can go over the rationales behind why they chose to induce with ketamine versus fentanyl, or, whatever they're doing that's a little bit different in the case. They can kind of go over that with you. Maybe ask them about ventilator settings. Say, like, why did you choose this ventilator setting over something else? You can ask them about where they went to school and how school was for them, and what did they find the most challenging part about school was. What else can you ask them? I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. just be friendly, be who you are. Maybe tell them a little bit about why you're pursuing CRNA. They may want to get to know you a little bit. And now when you get more personable with the CRNA, this is also why I think doing the shadowing is beneficial, especially if you stick with the same CRNA and do it more than once, because they can become really great letters of reference for you. Especially if they take the time to get to know you and know why you're pursuing CRNA, they can become one of your allies and really help you during the application process. They can become your own personal mentor. So I think it's worthwhile to try to be friendly and try to get to know them in a sense that you can come back and shadow them again. And like I said, they can become a really good reference for you down the road. I've had some people ask me whether they can ask for a reference from a CRNA they shadowed once. I think you can, and a lot of CRNAs definitely will do that, but keep in mind, if they really don't know you or took time to get to know you during that one day, they might have to put NA for a lot of the qualifications. Most of the time these days, the reference letters are automated and they just list these characteristics, and you're given a scoring system, and you're also given not applicable. And so if they really never took the time to talk to you, but you sat there really quietly and just shadowed them for the day, they're going to probably have to put a bunch of not applicable because they really don't know you. So it's okay to ask for a reference for a CRNA you shadowed once, but make sure you're taking initiative to get to know them, get their email, get their number, get to know them a little bit, so that way they can, and maybe give them your resume, maybe give them your essay for school, something like that, to where they can kind of get to know you a little bit to make sure your reference is a better reference and not just a bunch of not applicable checks. They may just give you excellent all across the board just because they're giving you the benefit of the doubt. But some people may not feel comfortable doing that if they really truly don't know you. So just something to be aware of when you're asking shadowing experiences for references. But yeah, I think that kind of sums up what I was going to go over with you guys today. So if you guys haven't heard yet, and again, depending on when you listen to this, I know it could be way after the fact, because sometimes I know me, I like to go through podcasts that I love and like just binge listen to everything. But just as a quick reminder, CRNA School Prep Academy has a conference coming up this fall. We are so excited to meet you guys. There is so much opportunity and growth that you're going to walk away with from this conference. I'm going to be listing the link to learn more in the show notes. But again, that's taking place in October 2021, October 23rd and 24th of 2021. And again, Richard and I are so excited to meet you guys. So if you want to learn more, head over to events.crnaschoolprepacademy.com to learn more about the in-person experience that you'll get with us. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.